Hi everyone, this is Ricky Spencer and welcome to another of our fabulous interviews for the Sociology of Media Voices series. And today we have the newly elected Mayor, Sarah Carter, for the Maribyrnong City Council. Now, this is somebody I've known for quite a while. They are incredible. They are really committed into community capacity building in the West. That she has worked tirelessly in many community groups and through the council. But I'll first hand it over to Sarah. If you could give us a little bit of a, who are you, Sarah?
That's a big question, isn't it? Thank you for having me, Ricky, and lovely to see you again. I have been on Maribyrnong Council. This is now my 15th year, so quite some time, 4 consecutive terms. But I've lived in the Inner West since attending Victoria University as a mature age student at 22 years of age. Now that's a little over 20 years ago now, so giving away my age. But fun fact, my sub-major was in sociology. I always loved it. You know, the age-old question, is a pen just a pen? And I think that's how they opened the first class when we started sociology. But really passionate about community. I fell into it, so I wasn't involved in student politics or anything like that. But out of university, my first job was working with Hume City Council as a communications officer and writing the community magazine. And of course, you get to attend a lot of openings and events, and just seeing the power of local government to really transform the lives of residents. And the wonderful contributions that you could make as a councillor. So I caught the bug. I ran for my first election in 2008 and was successful, and now serving my 3rd term as mayor, which I love. When I'm not being mayor, because when you're a councillor, that is a part-time role. I work in international development. I'm really passionate about Australia's aid program and supporting those that are experiencing humanitarian crises, and to gain that political will to continue to be a good neighbour, and to support those more vulnerable communities in our region.
That's wonderful. And I think what's great about your role, and you especially, is that for our younger generations coming up, you're showcasing how women can make change and take on leadership roles and really, really do great things in our community. And then one of the goals for me to have you on today, I really wanted to really get for everyone to understand the value of participating in community work, but also getting involved in council, because for so long people have sort of thought, oh well, what can I do to make change? And part of my thesis is sort of looking at disruption theory, but in that practical ways of how we can make systemic change. And part of that is getting involved in advocacy and working groups. So I guess let's start. What do you see, or what can you tell us is the value for people getting involved in, say, the council, and how can people let's start there. How can people get involved in council?
Well, I think that there are many misconceptions about local government just being roads, rates, and rubbish, and that's certainly core to our service provision. But Maribyrnong City Council, for example, provides about 40 direct services, and they cross many touch points in a person's life. If you look at early years through to positive aging, and youth services, you're really crossing off on a lot of areas that are touch points and really important services for people. And there are many ways to get involved. So for those that are inclined, running to be elected as a councillor is a wonderful idea, and we have elections every 4 years, and I always extend an invitation for anyone who's interested, because I honestly believe it's one of the most formative leadership opportunities that you can have, because there are so many needs in the community, and obviously you're constrained by a budget, but prioritizing what you see as the needs of your community. It is a steep learning curve, and there's always a lot of contested issues, but working through those with the community is incredibly rewarding. For those that might not want to go to an election. There are advisory committees. Council has a range of advisory committees that we put out for public nominations for people to participate. And sometimes, you know, the appointments for 1 year or ranging through to 3 years. And as we've spoken about previously, we've got our LGBTQIA+ advisory committee that was formed last year, and we launched our first rainbow strategy this year. I was very proud to launch that as mayor. And we also have a disability advisory committee, a youth advisory committee, a heritage advisory committee, you name it, there's an advisory committee. So that's a really constructive way for those that might not want to get into or be elected as a councillor. But I will always advocate for more people to put their hands up to be a councillor, because it is just so wonderful. It does come with challenges of balancing it with a career and obviously with other external commitments, but it's deeply rewarding.
And speaking of challenges, what do you see are one of the two key, or so both key challenges in the Maribyrnong area for you as mayor for the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
I think the greatest challenge that we're experiencing is what I refer to as growing pains. We have a fast growing community. We're expecting to reach 150,000 residents by 2042. So that's a lot of density in a very small area. And of course, that puts pressure on services, and planning and things like that. So the growing pains, we're really feeling that. And then I believe there still exists a disparity where a fast gentrified community in some areas, but then there are other areas where it's quite lower socioeconomic households. So, and the requests from each respective communities and across the board can be quite different. So I think planning for everyone and planning for growth is a real challenge. Planning for growth in the context of a rate capping environment when inflation is way above the rate cap is really difficult. So one of the concerns I have is about the sustainability of local government in providing community infrastructure, because there's only so much that you can go to the state and federal government for to contribute funds to those major infrastructure projects. So it really is balancing the growth whilst also paying attention to the nuanced and perhaps those that don't have so much of a platform or a voice. I guess it goes back to me being an advocate in my full-time role as well, but always making sure that those that don't have a voice or have the platform are listened to and also represented. So I think that's really important.
And interesting. So with your expertise and experience in international development, one of the things that I love about living in Footscray, and I've been living here for many years and grew up, 50 years ago in this area, is the multicultural aspect. There's a whole different people coming into the spaces and how it kind of creates an identity of vibrancy. What are one of, I guess, if you had to describe city of Maribyrnong to, say, people listening to our audience all around Australia, what are a couple of words how you could describe Maribyrnong?
I think it's spirited. I think there is this spirit to the place, which is informed by that melting pot of cultures. I think it has a rich history. If you look at the waves of migration and refugees that came from Vietnam and their lasting legacy that will always be a part of the identity of Footscray, but then successive waves of migration and looking to little Africa that we have. And I just find that so wonderful. These really strong identities that you reference that haven't been diluted. They've retained their authenticity, but they've also integrated into a broader, I think Westies are quite tribal, aren't we? And we love the West. And I know I'm biased because I've, lived here for the last 23 years, but I think, and you can probably attest to this more so than I, but there is something very unique and special about the place that I think is very different to a lot of inner city areas and urban councils. And I think that sense of identity of not only as a Westie, but as being of many cultures is really integral to who we are. Because, I mean, I wouldn't miss celebrating Holi with our South Asian community for the world, just as I'm looking forward to Ramadan and going to the mosque next Saturday night. And it's just this embracing of many cultures and the stories of those cultures. So not just taking a superficial, yes, we like to throw colour, but really delving into what that cultural celebration means for that community. I think we've done really well to keep the integrity of the many nations that are represented, and many for whom Australia, has become home. And yeah, there's an authenticity to how we embrace multiculturalism in Maribyrnong.
Mm. And I think one of the unique things too within this area is the fact that, we have a university which has grown, and I mean, before Victoria University was Footscray Institute of Technology. It has a really long, deep-rooted history, in training and education. And going on that theme, I'm just thinking, what place do you feel that researchers have in helping shape, say, like your council? Do you see value in, say, social planners and people researching public health for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know in the past and to this day, Maribyrnong City has a really close relationship with Victoria University and the Western Bulldogs, and even through our Lead West representative group. And that's made up of CEOs and delegates from council from the whole of the Western region. Quite often, a lot of the work that we do is based on researchers being contracted through the Victoria University. You even look to our Citizen of the Year, Dr. John Simons, and the work that he has done researching active transport, and particularly cycling infrastructure and the benefits for that and the lessons and learnt from overseas. So there's always been a role to have researchers inform our planning, and quite often they do. And I feel like that's something that we could leverage, particularly in a social planning perspective, to look at particularly those challenges with growth, and how do we retain all the things we love now and not let that be diluted as we become more populous, as the pressures of the cost of living throughout history tend to push people further out and away from infrastructure and away from community. So how do we, through planning, how do we plan to keep everything that we love intact whilst we're growing at a really rapid rate? Because the last I heard, we were the gateway to the fastest growing region in Australia. We'd taken over Queensland. But it's a lot, we're in a state of flux, and there's a lot of pressures. So I think social planning has a really integral role to play in how we facilitate how communities organise.
Absolutely. And speaking on that theme, one of the things that I always tell teachers, and just to get your views, is the role councils can play with schools, especially for students in primary, but also in high school, looking at projects and how to find information about identity, space and place. What do you feel that councils can do to help students sort of with those sorts of issues, or find information?
Well, one of the fun things that we launched a few weeks ago, I launched the Passport to Play, and it was designed by local school students. More than 400 students, primary school and some secondary, had input into this. And at face value, it looks like a passport, and it's where do you like to play, what activities. But we know the research shows that kids are less active today than they were, 5, 10 and 15 years ago. We know that they're engaging in less physical activity. In fact, Vic Health put out a report 2 weeks ago showing that of the 25 urban councils, Maribyrnong ranked 22. for physical participation by young children. So what we're trying to do through Passport to Play, which they co-designed, which I love the co-design process, and I know you'll appreciate that,
Oh, I
given
love
your
it.
background.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's, kids telling us where they like to play, where they feel safe, how they, navigate their spaces, and then what they value about those spaces, which is really informative for how we continue to plan for recreational opportunities for young people. So I think that direct engagement of school and actually schools and having them co-design is a really great way. I've done a few school visits in the last month to hear from young people about they want, but I do like that more deliberative engagement piece, because I think you just end up with so much more targeted and quite specific information from young people themselves.
The other thing I noticed that I wanted to share with everyone and maybe have a comment by you is, people listening, is you've created a portal for the council where you're allowing people to have your say. And I've noticed that projects that come up, what is sort of the thinking behind that? And I guess because that's quite, I've really have enjoyed that, because it's been allowing me as a resident of this area to kind of look at different planning proposals, different things that are happening, and have my input. How important is that for you as mayor?
So important. It was one of the things that I'd kind of pushed on quite early on, because as a communications professional and with a strong interest in sociology and the principles of how communities organise, council, quite often residents would say, well, you put, and this is back when most people relied on newspapers, the local newspaper, for their information, but they felt that it was a one way of communication rather than reciprocal. And then also having the evidence base to be able to show people how their inputs have then informed decision making. So circling back and really tying off on the consultation to make sure that it is compliant with the IAP2 credentials and models of engagement. But I think it has just allowed for more fulsome commentary, for a two-way dialogue, for us to capture more information and more detailed commentary to then inform our thinking. So we only have to look to the most recent. We've had 2 rounds of engagement on the McIver Reserve Master Plan, and there were quite significant changes made to the second iteration of that based on all the information we collected through Your City, Your Voice. So I think with we don't see the circulation of local newspapers, and whilst it has gone online, there are still quite significant cohorts in our community that are not engaging through, local media and things like that. And so much information is on social media, but then also making sure that it's correct. And I think having one portal to go to, and now that people know about it, they can keep track of projects that are coming up before council that are directly, have an impact on their lives, their day-to-day lives. So, I mean, there's always going to be criticisms of how you do it. And I think any level of government, at times has those challenges. I think we can always do it better, but having Your City, Your Voice is certainly one way of ensuring that it's a two-way dialogue with our community.
It's wonderful. And thank you so much for your time, Mayor Sarah Carter. And what we'll do is we'll put the Maribyrnong Council website on the link for people to have a little browse and look like. And I guess if there are researchers out there throughout Australia who are interested in, I guess, maybe reaching out to you to look at perhaps projects or to get perspectives of someone with an international development expertise, and what it's like to be a woman in 2023 running a leading council. Yeah, it'd be wonderful. But thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Thank you, as ever. Lovely to see you.